Terra was unified. The wars were over. The warlords were dead. The techno-kings lay in ruin. The old tyrannies had been burned from the bones of the world. For the first time in uncounted ages, humanity stood as one species on one world. And in that silence a vision was revealed, not of conquest alone, but unity, not of domination, but order, not of empire, but of destiny. He did not speak of gods, he did not speak of worship, he did not demand faith, he spoke of reason, of truth, of science, of unity, of a future where humanity would no longer kneel to superstition, to fear, to false gods, or to the nightmares of the warp. He called it the Imperial Truth. A galaxy without religion, a species without chains, a future without masters. And Terra answered. The forges ignited, but not on Terra alone. Far from the cradle of mankind the red world stirred. Mars, a planet of dust and iron, a world of sacred engines and living steel, a realm where machines were not tools, but gods. There dwelt the keepers of ancient knowledge, the priests of machine, the guardians of humanity's last sciences, the Mechanicum. And the Emperor did not break them. He did not burn their temples. He did not silence their faith. He stood before their forges and spoke not as a conqueror, but as a revelation. And they called him the Omnissiah. Thus a sacred union was forged, not through chains, but through belief, not through conquests, but through covenant. The red forges of Mars were bound to Terra. Steel was bound to flesh. Faith was bound to reason. A machine was bound to throne. And from that union came the engines of empire. The ships that would cross the void. The weapons that would burn the stars. The armor that would clothe the legions. The machines that would carry mankind into the abyss. The gene folds opened, the foundries roared. Humanity was remade for war. The Legiones Astartes were born, not men, not sons, not heroes. Gene forged, post-human, engineered, immortal. Living weapons shaped in the image of mankind. And above them, he forged his greatest creations, the Primarchs, demigods of flesh and gene craft, architects of conquest, lords of war, kings shaped for the galactic throne. They were not meant to be soldiers alone. They were meant to be rulers, builders, unifiers, the future fathers of humanity's dominion among the stars. They were meant to grow on Terra, to be raised under his hand, to be shaped by his vision, to inherit his dream. But the warp was watching, and the gods that live within it were afraid, because united humanity would starve them, because a rational galaxy would weaken them, because a future without worship would unmake them. And so they struck. Reality tore. The veil between worlds ruptured. The immaterium bled into real space. The Emperor's gene vaults were breached by forces older than stars. The laboratories of creation became chambers of cosmic violence, and the Primarchs were taken. Not killed, not destroyed, stolen. Their gestation chambers were dragged into the warp. Their vessels were torn from reality. Their forms were scattered through nightmare and infinity, cast across the galaxy, thrown through time and space, lost in storms of unreality and shadow. They fell onto distant worlds, alien worlds, forgotten worlds, war-torn worlds, savage worlds, dying worlds. And there they were raised by strangers, forged by war, hardened by suffering, shaped by violence, crowned by conquest, worshipped as gods, feared as monsters, loved as kings. They did not grow as brothers. They grew as rulers. They did not learn unity. They learned dominion. They did not inherit one future. They inherited many. The suns were lost, scattered across the stars. And so the crusade began without them. Humanity left Terra, not as explorers, but as reclaimers. The Great Crusade, a war of reunification, a war of conquest, a war of reclamation. The stars burned with war. Lost human worlds were rediscovered. Broken colonies were reclaimed. Enslaved populations were freed. Forgotten civilizations were absorbed. And those who refused were erased. Compliance or extinction. Faiths were shattered. Cultures were erased. Histories were rewritten. Worlds were silenced. Not in hatred or cruelty, but in the name of unity, in the name of reason, in the name of a future that would belong to humanity alone. And as the crusade spread, they began to find them, the lost sons, across burning worlds, across dead systems, across forgotten empires, across distant stars. One by one, each a king, each a warlord, each a god to their people, each reclaimed by the Imperium, each placed at the head of a legion. And with every son recovered, the crusade accelerated, the galaxy bent, the void opened, the stars fell into alignment, humanity rose. For the first time since the long night of old Earth, mankind was not hiding. It was advancing, not surviving, but ascending. And for a time it worked. The Golden Age was born in fire and blood. An empire forged in conquest and conviction. A destiny written across the stars. It was terrible. It was glorious. It was unstoppable. But even in that rising light, shadows grew, because empires built on obedience do not understand loyalty, because unity forged by force does not create love, because sons created as weapons are not born to be sons, and because destiny always demands a price. The galaxy was being unified, the Imperium was rising, the Great Crusade was unstoppable, and yet, within the blood of its demigods, within the hearts of its greatest sons, within the ranks of its angels, something was already breaking, slowly, silently, inevitably, because the greatest empire humanity would ever build would not be destroyed by Xenos. It would not fall to monsters. It would not collapse to the void. It would be shattered from within.